What's up, y'all? It's K.E. Lewis. I am children's author of Never Take Your Rhino on a Plane, Because of Dads, and the short story, Now You See Me in the Haunted States of America. A lot of people are wondering what takes so long to break into traditional publishing? Why is the process so long? I'll tell you why. Because one, this is a long game. Two, there are some processes that we have to take into consideration, like illustrator time, illustrator search, ramping up for the book, all of those variables that play into this whole process. And three, what it takes for you to be ready as a creative. This video is really going to break down the timeline and what you should be doing as you are getting ready to break into this big industry. What I want you to do is to reshape our thinking a bit here because I know a lot of people want to be published like yesterday. And then a lot of people think that when you get into this business, you finally become rich. You hit that $1 million book deal. You don't have to worry about working anymore. People celebrate you as a creative, that sort of thing. That's not the case whatsoever, especially in picture books. It takes a while, one, for writers to gain traction for their work. But two, picture books don't pay that much. And three, I would say it's just like a musician where you get paid more for your actual appearances than your album. Or in this case, your school visits, your author visits, your museum visits than you do the actual book. So now that you know that, let's get into the nitty gritty of the process of publishing and what you should be doing step by step. Before we get into this video, just want to shout out the South Carolina Arts Commission and the National Endowment for the Arts who have sponsored this video, who are supporting my mission for literacy in both adults and children worldwide. They have so graciously sponsored this video and the knowledge that I'll be imparting on you. That should have bought you some time. Now that you have your pens and paper out, first thing I want you to think about before you even think about making that deal, getting that deal, is to take the first 2 to 3 years to actually keep your head down and invest in your craft and in your knowledge of the business. This is super important because a lot of people want to be published yesterday. But what if you do get a deal today? What if you actually land an agent today? Do you know what to look for when you do land an agent? Do you know the signs of a bad agent? Do you know the signs of a bad deal? Do you know what to look for? Do you know what your royalty should be? Are you equipped for long-term success? The thing about breaking into this industry is that, one, in order to be a children's author, one, you definitely need an agent. It's mandatory. There are only one or two places that don't require you to have an agent, but those places don't pay really well, one. And two, I would say that you always need somebody advocating for your worth and your value. You definitely just need an agent. Have an agent, have an agent, have an agent. I cannot stress that enough. This business requires longevity, not just a one and done type situation, because agents actually want to manage and agent careers, not just someone who has one particular project. Now, there are agents out there who will take you project by project basis, but most agents want to manage a career, and most publishers want to support those who have multiple books. So, my advice before you even think about querying an agent, which is step number 2, my advice before you think about querying an agent and actually going into that door is to learn your craft and learn the business of the industry. In learning your craft, read as many books as you can, attend conferences and workshops, practice writing, build your writing community, frequent your libraries, treat writing as a lifestyle, like immerse yourself into this culture that you're getting into because there's a whole world out here. The thing about writing for children is that children's literature is 0 to 18. A lot of people think that children's literature are only books that are heavily illustrated. It is not. You have board books, picture books, early readers, chapter books, graphic novels, poetry collections, anthologies, hybrids, reference books. It's a whole entire world, and you want to make sure that you are learning the genre, what you want to write, and the requirements or the guidelines in writing each one, because there are general guidelines for each of these genres, which we'll talk about in a future video. And while you're learning the craft, again, you want to learn the business. So what's hot right now in the space. What do books look like? What are agents calling for? What are editors looking for? Which publishing house is looking for a particular book? What are the aesthetics of each publishing house? Because you'll be surprised that each publishing house has a different aesthetic. There are certain books that Candlewick publishes that are more Candlewick-esque than there is Penguin Random House. The same thing with Abrams, Simon and Schuster, HarperCollins. Each of these publishers, and even the smaller publishers within the publishers, also called imprints. All of these imprints, all of these publishers have different tastes, and you want to make sure that you are submitting to the right publisher, the right agent, the right editor, thinking about the illustrators that you want to use that speak and resonate with you and your work and your style. You also want to think about the editors who champion voices like yours. Publishing historically has been a very exclusive lane, and it's only meant for certain people. So you want to align yourself with those editors who highlight and champion stories written by people who look like you or who have those same lived experiences, because that is going to pay back in dividends when it comes to your working relationships and those who champion your stories and make sure that your stories are being pushed and being marketed in the way that they should. If you want to learn beginner language for actually getting into the business, go to my website, kelewis.world. There's a glossary there for kid lit beginners, and there's some other things to get you started. All right, next one. You have a grasp on the industry. You've actually taken the time to refine your craft. You know how to cater to the page turns. You know how to create a story or concept that editors and agents will want to eat up. You know which publishers this would be a great fit for. You know the market and the trends and why this book is a standout right now. You know all those things based on the work that you put in for 2 to 3 years. You've gone to conferences, you've gone to workshops, you're plugged in, you've built yourself a little writing community. The librarians know you, the bookstore owners know you because you have made yourself known and you are serious about this thing and you're going to the next step. You're ready for the next step, which is querying an agent. In this process, you will learn that there are different steps to querying an agent. There is what you call a query letter, where you pitch your work to the agent saying, hey, this is a great story. I think publishers would love this story, or I believe this is an incredible story because this, and this. The agent asks you for more work, you give them more work, and then they say, hey, I really want to work with you as a creative. I believe in your stories. Let's work together. And that's when you and the agent work together. And in your working relationship, not only are you working on the story that you submitted to present to publishing houses, because you haven't gotten to the submission part yet, you work on your other work, and then you two strategize together to figure out where you want to send your work. Of course, your agent is an expert in the field. They would know and should know more than you do. However, your knowledge and your expertise matters in this step. Why? Because you want to make sure that you two are in alignment with one another. Sometimes you will know things about a particular editor or a particular house that's calling for a type story that your agent might not know at the time. And so it becomes a relationship where both of you can work together and feed off of each other in those moments. Also, in this particular relationship, you think about your creative strengths, your creative differences, the editorial style, which you would consider before getting to this point, and thinking about whether you want an editorial agent or an agent who goes out on submission right away, that sort of thing. Those are things that you would experience in this step. The thing about landing an agent is the agent, of course, is managing your career. So when you land this agent, you and this agent will work together to sell your work to the publishing houses, because your literary agent's job is to broker your deals related to your books. They'll sell the written rights, and you two will work to negotiate any licensing rights after you sell the book. So think about merchandise, think about movies and animation and TV, amusement parks, toys, games, that sort of thing. And so your agent is your advocate and your champion for your stories. Now let's go to the next step in the process. Let's say you and your agent went out on submission. Submission is a process where your agent sends your work to multiple publishers, and those publishers consider whether they want to buy that work. If those publishers want to buy the rights for your work, they take it to a meeting called acquisitions. And in acquisitions, they consider profit and loss statements. They think about how it appeals to the market. They think about related titles and how well those titles are doing and how this one has a different appeal from those titles. There are several different things that play into this meeting before a publisher actually acquires or buys a book. So let's do a little recap and then we're going to go to the next phase. So we started this process, investing in our craft, learning the industry. Then we landed an agent. The agent submits the work to the publishing house, and the publishing house, you got the deal, they acquire the manuscript. When a publisher acquires a manuscript, this is where the process could take anywhere from 2 years up to 5, 6, 7, depending on the variables that are in the way. One thing you need to know is that it takes an illustrator at least 18 months to illustrate an entire book. Let's take Never Take Your Rhino on a Plane, for example. If you look at this book, a picture book is generally 32 pages. So Isabel, the illustrator for this project, she had to illustrate the cover. She had to illustrate, of course, the title page. And then there are 32 pages she has to illustrate within this actual book. And you also have end papers, which takes a whole lot of time. And the thing about Isabel, if you look at this here, is that this is actually cut out construction paper. These are cutouts here. And so Isabel's process uses construction paper, pastels, and a little bit of digital art here. So imagine somebody actually having to go through all three of those mediums to create a book. So that is one variable to consider within itself, is the illustrator's time. However, before you even have an illustrator, you go through what's called the illustrator search.
Hey, if you made it this far, that means you're serious about your craft and you're trying to understand the world of children's literature and how to break into kid lit. So you really should check out my resources at kelewis.world. Those resources will help you understand the industry, deepen your craft, and give you tools and tricks you'll find useful on your journey. If you are a teacher looking at this video, there are additional resources for you. See how I transform my books into engaging curriculum where you unpack the book and you get to explore literacy, math, science, and the arts. It's the perfect lesson plan for the day that you don't really feel like teaching, but also the ideal prep when preparing for a school visit. So run over to my site at kelewis.world and check out those resources. Now back to the conversation.
And when you go through the illustrator search is the publisher actually searching for the illustrator who's right for your work. Sometimes the publisher will give you like input asking you, who do you see illustrating your work? Which of course, back in the very beginning, when you were learning your craft, you were actually paying attention to illustrators. So now when you're asked that question about who you love to work with or who you see illustrating your work, it doesn't catch you by surprise. In fact, you have loads of ideas because you've done the work. And that illustrator search could take anywhere from 2 to 3 days to 2 to 3 years. It just depends, because whenever a publisher sends out a work to illustrators and illustrator agents, that illustrator has to consider several different things. One, they have to see if they're passionate about the book, because they're spending 2, 3, sometimes 4 years with your project in front of them, and they have to return to that work every single day. So does it move them in a way that they actually want to spend time on it? Do they see themselves as the one who's creating the work? Do they have a book that's already too similar and they don't want to compete with another title that they have on their list? Those are some of the questions that illustrators and illustrator agents have to ask when they're considering a manuscript. And so sometimes the publisher can send a manuscript to an illustrator and the illustrator eventually says no because of one or more of the factors that I just named. So best case scenario, the illustrator will be chosen within, I would say, 1 to 2 months, and then the illustrator gets to work, which is 18 months at minimum, but it could take up to more, because the illustrator, if they are a high-profile illustrator, or even if they are not a high-profile illustrator, illustrators have other books that they're working on. They have other projects that they're attending to at the time. So it might take them 6 months to a year before they even start sketching your work. And high-profile illustrators, sometimes it takes them 2 to 3 years before they get to your work because they have so many projects already in their pipeline. But let's go with the best case scenario where the illustrator who both you and the publisher are thinking about says yes, and that yes happens pretty quickly within 4 to 6 weeks, and the illustrator gets to work. In this process, your editor is the intermediary, and they will share sketches between you and the illustrator, and you two will go back and forth, roughly about 2 to 3 rounds of art. You'll get to see your book in development. There'll be a chance where you'll get to chime in on the process, on what's working, what's not working, and then your book will go to final art. But before we go to final art, we have just spent, think about it now. You took 2 to 3 years to get into this industry. It took you maybe a year to land your agent, 6 months on submission between the time your agent sends out your work and you actually get a deal, landing the illustrator, which took about 2 months, and then the illustrator doing his or her work, 2 years. So you're already 5 years into this thing, right? You're already 5 years in. But what have you been doing in the time that you've been waiting on your book to be published? One, you're writing more books. Two, you're still going to conferences and workshops developing your craft. Three, you're building your network, and your network continues to grow. So just because you signed the deal, just because you landed the contract, does not mean that you stop the work. You have to keep going. Again, this is a lifestyle, and especially if you are in it for the money, you want to make sure that you have multiple titles so that you can get multiple advances and multiple royalty checks. Okay, so your book goes off to print. For those of you who don't know, it takes about 6 months. In that 6 months time, a couple of things are happening. When the book goes off to print, the physical copies of this book, you have a digital copy or PDF. That PDF or that digital copy goes out to reviewers. So Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, School Library Journal, Junior Library Guild. It goes to those places so that publishers and reviewers can begin ramping up the word and the publicity for your title before it even hits the shelf. So during that 6 months, some things are happening in the background. A marketing plan is being created for books that get marketing, because all books don't get marketing. You should be reaching out to schools, libraries, festivals, letting them know that your book is coming. All of these things are happening in the background, or should be happening in the background as you prepare. And during the 6 months that you are revving up talk and excitement for your title, you're also planning your book launch. Like a day where you come and celebrate, whether you want to celebrate with family or friends or the community. You're celebrating a book launch, partnering with your bookstore or your library or your museum to put your book out into the world, which quite naturally leads us to the big day, which is publication day. Fun fact, books are published on a Tuesday. So chances are your launch day will be on a Tuesday. Your launch party will probably be on the weekend, but your book will come out throughout the week, because launching it on a Tuesday helps to create and build momentum throughout the week. As people are in the hustle and bustle of their regular work week, checking emails, browsing social media, and not consumed by Monday emails or Friday's angst to get to the weekend. So now that your book is published, you have post-publication things to worry about, which is your school visits, your festival visits, keeping your book out in front of people and out into the world. A lot of people gear up for the publication day, but they don't think about what happens after publishing. You have to think about what happens after publishing, because this is what gives your story its reach, its impact. It's the time that matters, because it gets your story into the hands of as many readers as possible. So what are you doing to promote your book? How are you partnering with your publisher? How are you reaching out to them? Are you doing school visits? Are you promoting on socials? Are you leaning into your community to find panels that you could sit on and talk about your books, the themes and topics? Are you connecting with teachers and librarians? Are you searching to see where your book is or where your book is not, and actually making sure that it's in those spaces so that it could be readily available for readers? The great thing about traditional publishing is that it will be in most mainstream outlets and bookstores. However, there are smaller bookstores and there are niche opportunities where your knowledge would be valuable in pairing with your publishers so that it can expand your reach and your impact for your book. The thing that we didn't talk about is that is because you were still working while you were going through the illustrator search and waiting on your illustrations for your first book. While your first book has been published out into the world, you are in that process for your second book, where you might be waiting on illustrations for your second book. and the third book might be on submission to your publisher. So you begin to juggle as you look forward to your publication day. So even though it took you 5, 6 years to get to this point, you have 3, 4, 5 other projects that you are waiting on and that are in that process because you were diligent and you did the work. So as you can see, there are multiple variables that determine this timeline for publishing, but these are the main pieces and the main parts. And this channel will actually help you break down each one of those pieces and parts as we go along this journey. Again, feel free to go to my website. There are tools and resources there for you that will help supplement some of this teaching I'm doing on this channel, and it'll help you get further along than if you were doing this by yourself. If you need some extra support as you break into publishing and try to figure out how to write for children, watch the rest of the videos on this channel, and I'll see you soon.